I recently came across a book. It's called Letters to Milena by Franz Kafka. Okay, Franz Kafka's Letters to Milena. It's very interesting. These, I think, are his real letters to his beloved. Both lived in different countries, and he wrote to her. Milena Jesenska. I don't know how to pronounce Jesenska. I really don't know. So if anyone ever listens to this, please forgive me for mispronouncing because I really don't know how to pronounce it. I can easily search it on YouTube in the pronunciation sections and I can correct myself, but then I'll lose the flow of thought that I'm having currently, so I'm not going to do that. So, yes, Letters to Milena by Franz Kafka. I also learned that those writings that are written on the back of a book is called a book blurb. BLURB, book blurb. What is written on the back of this book is something that I really found very interesting. So I'm gonna read it here. Kafka first met Milena in 1920 when she was translating his early short prose into Czech, and their relationship quickly developed into a deep attachment. Such was his feeling for Milena that Kafka showed his diaries to her. In doing so, laid bare his heart and his conscience. I think it's adorable. In 1924, Kafka died in a sanatorium near Vienna, where Milena died in 1944 at hands of Nazis, leaving these letters as a moving record of their relationship. Wow, it is sad and romantic. I think you have to believe in the kind of romance that never dies or, I don't know, stirs your soul. I used to believe in that kind of romance when I was very young, like a teenager maybe. I don't know. I don't remember, but I used to believe in that kind of romance, and then it faded because, well, I feel romance fades, discipline stays, maybe hard work you put in a relationship stays, or maybe love stays. Who am I to say anything about it? So, I would like to read few of the letters. These are very short ones. So, time to time, I would like to read few of the letters that Kafka wrote to Milena. Like, I'll not read all of the letters. I'll maybe read the first one, which was written in 1920, which completed 100 year in 2020. So I'll read that one. And then as I further with the book, I'll record some of my favorite ones. Like when I opened the book for the first time, a random page opened up and I read a very small 2-3 lines I read. Jisme, the writer writes, in the letter the poet has written, the writer has written that you should cover the letter properly and you should wrap the envelope properly because as you put the letter and fold the letter into the envelope, this becomes my property and you should always take care of other people's property. There was so much intimacy in this statement. I mean, if you understand, it's so raw and it's very formal also, and at the same time it's very personal also. It's very intimate also. Also, it feels like reading someone's diary. Is it unethical or is it ethical? What does it matter because the people are dead long? I don't know. I'm just blabbering, so I'll just read. So basically, I'll just read about these. So, if at all this is the original copy of the letter, I'm reading the letter from April 1920. On the right hand side, it's written Miran, Unter Mais, Pension Ottoberg, and in left he writes Dear Frau Milena. And it ends with cordial greetings, F. Kafka. So now this is the basically structure of the letter that I'm talking about. It's a 2-paragraph letter, and I'm going to read it out. So it says, Dear Frau Milena, the rain which has been going on for 2 days and 1 night has just now stopped. Of course, probably only temporarily, but nonetheless an event worth celebrating, which I am doing by writing to you. Incidentally, the rain itself was bearable. After all, it is a foreign country here. Admittedly, only slightly foreign, but it does the heart good. If my impression was correct, Evidently, the memory of one single meeting, brief and half silent, is not to be exhausted. You were also enjoying Vienna as a foreign city, although later circumstances may have diminished this enjoyment. But do you enjoy foreignness for its own sake? Which might be a bad sign, by the way, a sign which such enjoyment should not exist. I'm living quite well here. The mortal body could hardly stand more care. The balcony outside my window is sunk into a garden, overgrown and covered with blooming bushes. The vegetation here is strange. In weather cold enough to make the puddle freeze, in Prague, blossoms are slowly unfolding before my colony. Moreover, this garden receives full sun, or full cloud, as it has for almost a week. Lizards and birds, unlikely couple, come visit me. I would very much like to share Miran with you. Recently, you wrote about not being able to breathe. That image and its meaning are very close to one another, and here both would find a little relief. So clearly, this is a response message because, sorry, response letter, because he writes that you wrote in your previous letter that you were not able to breathe. So yeah, that was one thing that I observed. That makes me very unsure if this is his first letter ever to her, because somewhere I read that this is the first letter ever. Or maybe hers was the first one and he replies to it, so it's his first letter. Also, I read somewhere that they moved a lot and not all the letters are available, some are lost in translation, etc., etc. So whatever, anyways. So in the first, it's a very small letter of 2 paras, like I already said. He writes it from Miran. Miran is a place, and he writes to her, and he tells about his place where he's staying, how the weather is and how the vegetation is. Basically, he describes his surrounding area right now. Now, right after this, there is another letter from April 1920, which he writes from Miran again. He writes, Dear Frau Milena, I wrote you a note from Prague and then from Miran, and I have not received any answer. This cannot be his first letter. I don't know. Things are lost. I have no idea if I have correct information. Sorry, I interrupted the letter. So he says, I have not received any answer. I wrote you from Prague and then from Iran. It so happens the notes did not require a particularly prompt reply, and if your silence is nothing more than a sign of relative well-being, which often expresses itself in an aversion to writing, then I am completely satisfied. However, it is also possible, and this is why I am writing, that in my notes I somehow hurt you. What a clumsy hand I must have had if that should have happened against all my intentions. Or else, which would of course be much worse, the moment of quiet relaxation you described has again passed and bad times have again descended upon you. In case the first is true, I don't know what to say. That's so far from my thoughts and everything else is so close. And for the second possibility, I have no advice. How could I? With just a simple question, why don't you leave Vienna for a little while? After all, you aren't homeless like other people. Wouldn't some time in Bohemia give you new strength? And if, for reasons unknown to me, you might not want to go to Bohemia and somewhere else, maybe even Milan would be good. Do you know it? So I'm expecting one of the two things, either continued silence, which means don't worry, I'm fine, or else a few lines, cordially Kafka. And later it occurs to me that I really can't remember your face in any precise detail, only the way you walked away through the table in the cafe, your figure, your dress, that I still see. Okay, so after reading the second letter, first letter was very, it did not inform me anything about the person or the relationship of the person with the other person. Although I do understand why she did not respond to the first one. I don't know if she was having a bad time. But seriously, if somebody writes to me about the lizard and the bird and their unlikely combination, or that how much vegetation has grown on the balcony, I would probably not want to reply, especially if my lover is writing to me about vegetation. like उसने बारिश का बात करा है, उसने पौधों का बात करा है, उसने चिड़िया और lizard का बात करा है. See, I understand. Even when I write letters, I write about things that are around me, to give a picture to the person, which it is giving. Like if for a reader, I'm reading this and I see a picture. I see a balcony and I see it's full of vegetation and I see there are birds visiting and lizards visiting. But I think if I'm your lover, I would want to know more than that. I don't know, like I think if especially if it's a love letter. I mean, it's not designated as a love letter, so maybe it's not a love letter, it's a normal letter. But still, there's no mention of how he feels about her. So maybe that's why if she got irritated and did not reply. नहीं, मैं मजाक कर रही. I don't know, because he has mentioned कि दो चीज़ें हो सकती हैं. या तो तुम चुप रहना चाहती हो क्योंकि मैंने हर्ट कर दिया है, या तो तुम ठीक हो, या तो सारी तीन चीज़ हो सकती है. मतलब उसने दो पॉइंट आउट किए, बट पहले उसने एक और पॉइंट आउट करी थी कि लाइक उसने तीन चीज़ें पॉइंट आउट करी कि या तो तुम ठीक हो, इतनी ठीक हो कि तुम मुझे जवाब नहीं दे रही हो. सेकेंड ही सेज ईदर योर there is some kind of some way or the other I've hurt you, and then he says, oh my god, मैं कितना clumsy होऊंगा कि मैंने तुम्हें hurt कर दिया. And then third thing he says कि like there's something is really wrong there, and etc. तो हाँ. So yes, he kind of apologizes for writing. He says, if I've hurt you. Well, if I'm Milena, I'm not hurt, I'm irritated. Because why the fuck are you writing about vegetation? Apparently, he has written 2 letters to her and none of them have been reciprocated. So he writes in worry. Okay. So yeah, he says that you've not responded, and I hope that basically he says that if I've hurt you by any chance, please know that I did not mean to, which is a fair enough apology, I think. Like, it's so far away from my thoughts. A good apology, I would accept it. Next he says that if you're not in like if there's something wrong there, then he says that why don't you move out from there and you go to Bohemia for a while, or you can even come to Miran. So he gives her a solution. Now I really want to read what Milena wrote to him. This makes me very inquisitive. Are there letters from Milena to Kafka as well? Because I would like to know that. Anyways, what the highlight for me in this is, I don't know what this means, but in italics below the letter it's written that it occurs to me that I can not remember the detail of your face in any precise detail, only the way you walked away through the tables in cafe, your figure, your dress, and that still I see. So, not being able to recognize the face, well, that happens to all of us. And as she walks away from the table in the cafe that they met, means he was sitting there when she walks away, and he remembers how the outline of the person. In both the letters, one thing was common. He wanted to see her. He invited her to Miran both the times. And then the third time he mentions here, which is very impliedly said because I cannot remember your face. So if you visit Miran, it will help me to recall how your face looks. So yeah, this was the highlight for me for both the letters. It occurs to me that I cannot remember the detail of your face. Nice. I look forward to reading more of these letters, but I would be very happy if I get to read what Milena wrote in response to the fact that he was telling about lizard and birds and vegetation. Oh shit, चैन नहीं है इस आदमी को. There are more letters from April 1920. Okay, oh my god, 3. Okay, 3. कम से कम 3 और लेटर लिखे हैं इसने मिलेना को. तो I'm assuming या तो उसने जवाब दिया नहीं है, पागल ही हो गया या तो जवाब दिया है उसने. I will search for the letters by her. If I find them, I'll be able to understand the context better. If not, then we'll read more, we'll get to know more, and I'll tell you if I find something very much more interesting. Anywho, I'll wrap this entire thing right here. कुत्तों की आवाज़ अगर बैकग्राउंड में आ रही होगी सौमित्र त्रिपाठी, तो don't pay attention to it. Or maybe pay attention to it, who cares? कुत्ते भौंक रहे हैं, हमेशा भौंकते हैं, कुछ नहीं कर सकते इसमें. मेरे पास कोई elaborate setup नहीं है. It's just a recording. And why the fuck am I talking about this? So anyways, I was in a very bad mood and I read this and I tried to analyze it and I tried to talk to myself about it like a lunatic, and I feel better. Like not a better, but I feel light basically. Another thing that strikes me is the fact that he remembers her walking away from that cafe, which means he was sitting there when she walks away, which means they did not go out together. Now, it can mean either they had an argument and she walks out, or they had a conversation that did not really, like, considering they were lovers, right? So one would assume, forget about lovers, people who are having a coffee together or having lunch together would move out of a place together. One would go their own way, the other would go their own way. So now this is merely a speculation. I've not read about this topic at all. I've not researched enough to know, but it's my mere observation from these two letters is that she walks away while he was still sitting. So clearly theirs is not a very normal courtship. Courtship is the right term? Normal relationship. They're not like normal basic lovers. Although I think I have read somewhere she was married to someone else. I mean, while they were doing ये letter खेल रहे थे तभी भी. So I don't know. I'll read further and then I'll find out. But yes, that was. I would like to know the reason why she walks away and he watches her walk away. And that's what he remembers, her walking away. And he remembers her outline and not the details of her face. So it has been a long time since they've seen each other. And I have a slight doubt. I think they've just met once, because in the first letter in the paragraph he says that that if my impression was correct, evidently the memory of one single meeting, brief and half silent, is not to be exhausted. You were also enjoying Vienna as a foreign city. I mean, half of the time she was silent and it was a very small meeting and it was a single meeting. So how are they lovers? एक तो समझ नहीं आता मुझे पुराने लोगों का कसम से. Anyway, so this is what I observed, okay?